All right, we are back, and now it's time for some wrestling lesson. I've gotten a couple of messages and some comments from previous videos that want to really dive deep into some of the Carney Day wrestlers and the Carney Day era stuff. So I think the next couple of wrestling lessons are going to be revolving around that era because it's still very unknown. Okay. And one of the biggest box office draws, especially around Quebec and around Boston, New York, was Maurice Tillett, also known as the French Angel. So he is a two-time AWA Boston heavyweight champion. So at this time, this is 1920s wrestling. So there was an American Wrestling Association run by a guy named Paul Bowser in Boston, Massachusetts. And the AWA that we know and love now was actually a California, Colorado-based promotion. Okay. So when I'm going to be talking about AWA in this context, that's what I'm going to be talking about. Okay. So this is 1940s through 1950s. Because he didn't have a long career, but he was incredibly popular. He had a undefeated streak for a very long time, and he was, a draw. He even went to Paris for a while and trained there. So let's talk about the man. So he was he was nicknamed the Angel because at the beginning, Peanut Gallery saw what this guy looked like. I mean, a bus hitting him directly in the face would improve his appearance. Wow. But actually, he did not develop the disease that actually brought him to that until he turned 20. He was known as the Angel because he was known as being very beautiful. Okay. And his mother was a Russian who left Russia during the Revolution, and they moved to France. Okay. And he settled in Reims, France. Okay. So he noticed, when he was 20, he noticed swelling at his feet, his hands, his head, and he visited a doctor who diagnosed him with acromegaly. I butchered that immensely, but this is a condition that was caused, at least to Tillett, from a benign tumor right on his pituitary gland. Okay. Which had resulting in bone overgrowth and thickening. This disease is significant because this is what Andre the Giant had. This is what the Big Show has. This is what Lars Sullivan has. But Tillett, because it was from a benign tumor that just kept growing instead of it being developed when he was born, actually accelerated it a lot faster. So the growth hormone in hands, feet, and head and face actually was a lot faster for him compared to a guy like Lars Sullivan. Okay. In February 1937, he actually wrestled in Singapore first as a professional wrestler. Okay. And when he was there, he was convinced to enter it in France and then obviously in the United States. All right. He was an educated man who actually had a law degree, and he was going to become a lawyer until the diagnosis of his disease. Okay. It did not affect his actual intelligence. This man was very, very intelligent. All right. But because of his appearance, he couldn't work because nobody would take him seriously. And it's unfortunate. So he actually fought in World War II, and then he went to the United States in 1939. In Boston, he met Paul Bowser, who pushed him as the French Angel, because that's what he was called in the military, and he was pushed immediately as a main eventer. Okay. Because this guy was, I think, like 6'1", and he was 300 pounds, but he also had abnormally large features. Right. And at this time, there was still that transition from Carney to Golden Age wrestling. Right. So a guy looking like this guy was very, very popular. Right. I mean, we saw that with Andre, too. Right. So he was booked as a unstoppable monster who was unbeaten for 19 consecutive months in 1940. He won the heavyweight champion for the AWA in May of 1940 until he lost it in May of 1942. Okay. He reappeared in Boston for a short time in 1944, and as a result of this success, there were a lot of imitators who had the same disease. So actually, the French
had the inspiration for a lot of those wrestlers.
Yes. So we had the Swedish Angel, who also had acromegaly, or whatever how you pronounce it, however I did it first. The Russian Angel, the Super Swedish Angel, who actually had a much more accelerated rate of this, and he was actually like 6'5". This guy was enormous. The Czech Angel, the Irish Angel, the Golden Angel, and the Black Angel. Oh, and also the Lady Angel, the first female to have the disease in professional wrestling on record. So obviously, this guy is incredibly influential with not only wrestling, but with this disease. He actually faced the Swedish Angel a couple of times before he retired. So in about 1945, obviously his body began to fail because with this disease he wouldn't stop growing. Right. So in 1945 he did wrestle his final match in Singapore. Or actually, no, this was 1953. So he wrestled his final match in Singapore, which was he was very popular there on February 14th, 1953. Yeah. And working under the National Wrestling Alliance Mid-South Arena, also known as Tri-State, and owned by, Leroy McGruck. And, he agreed to lose to Bart Esati. In 1950, somebody sculpted him, a sculptor, and they began a series. Actually, at this point in time, the busts of this man are in the International Museum of Surgical Science in Chicago because of how the face developed. Right. And still to this day, they use this man as a example of possible treatment and how this thing can grow because they actually have like where the tumor was and everything as well. And actually, one of the busts is in the personal collection of Bruce Pritchard as well. Nice. Yeah. So he died in September 4th, 1954 in Chicago. Okay. And he died of a cardiovascular disease, so a heart attack, after hearing of his trainer's passing. So he was buried in the Liechtenstein National Cemetery in Justice, Illinois. Cook County, 20 miles south of Chicago. Okay. And there is a lot of speculation, not yet confirmed, but a lot of speculation that Maurice Tillett's likeness was the inspiration for Shrek. There was a lot of facial features similar, and I guess the actual personalities do line up as well, despite him being very intelligent.
We're talking Shrek, the movie, the
yes.
Ogre, right? Yes.
Yes, we're talking about Shrek the Ogre. I say this because of personalities match. He was very intelligent, as I said before. He would go out and do a lot of things. He was invited to a lot of different ceremonies and stuff for royals and that stuff based on where he was. But he really liked his me time. He was a very isolated man by choice. He really liked to be out in the country, so that's where he lived, unless he had to do a social interaction.
That makes a little more sense now.
He rarely did autographs because of that personality as well. And he just thought he was too ugly to be around people. And also, with the growth and everything, he was treated like a monster. And it sucks. Right. So that was kind of our little wrestling lesson for the French Angel. And we have a couple of different ones around this era that I'm going to be covering over the next couple of shows.
Right.
And
when we come back,
we're going to be talking about New Japan's Castle Attack.
Oh,